Well, hello, friends. Everyone out there in the universe, the metaverse, the introverse, the extroverse. You are now in the pro-aging universe. And you're here with me, Dr. Paul Jared Frank, on the Pro-Aging Podcast. We are season 2, episode 6, I think. We're here at episode 6, and it is already getting warm in New York, even though it is still winter. And today I've got a good guest for you. Now, this is an easy one for me because it's someone that I've been bantering with for 20 some odd years. She was once an instructor of mine. She is now a peer of mine. She's a world-renowned board-certified cosmetic dermatologist, travels around the world, teaching, is on every board and advisory panel of all the major technology and pharmaceutical companies. And she actually studied journalism way before she even got into medicine, which gives her a very unique perspective, not only as a practitioner, but as a teacher and an educator. There is not enough time for me to go over all of her attributes, but her most important one is that she is a good friend and a very respected colleague, even though we disagree on things sometimes. And we're going to talk about that today. Dr. Doris Day, thank you for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me on. What a sweet introduction.
Yeah, now you've had your radio show for a while.
15 years, just
15 years, and I barely remember being on it when I was just a wee starting out dermatologist. She is not significantly older than me at all. We are actually quite close in training, but you were an instructor of mine. That's how we first met.
Yeah, for a whole year.
Back at NYU.
I'm still there.
So we used to teach together at NYU, and I was there for about 12 or 15 years, and you are still there.
Yeah, I'm going on close to 25 years now.
Ooh, as I choke myself.
Don't choke.
And tell me about your journalism background, because I've always found this so interesting. Did you originally want to become a journalist before a physician?
No, everybody has a story. So for me, my story was that my life-defining trauma was my sister getting cancer as we were teenagers and dying of cancer. And just watching her go through that and feeling so helpless because we just didn't talk about it in my family. It was just something that happened. The person I spent all my time with, we shared a room. We often slept in the same bed. We were inseparable. And it was all of a sudden she was gone. And all that she went through in that process, all the pain and the suffering to die at the end was, to me, just so heavy and painful, and to not have an understanding of what happened. So as I went through college, I was an English literature major and studied philosophy. And then I decided I wanted to be a physician because I just felt so bad that I thought if I understood what happened, it wouldn't feel so bad. Yeah. And I wanted to make a difference. And I come from a family of physicians. But I also wanted to tell her story and talk about hospice care and talk about patient power of like how much control you have over your life, and to really tell stories of people going through things. And right at the time I started my journalism program, which was a specialty journalism program at NYU that taught scientists how to be writers. So I had to apply to medical school to get into the program. And so I applied to medical school, thought I wouldn't get in and be done with it, but I got in, so I ended up having to go. And but it was a medical reporting program, and we were encouraged to write, but that was right in the early 80s when HIV started becoming a thing. Yeah. And so I covered a lot of meetings where there were skin findings of HIV was Kaposi sarcoma, which are these purple patches that people have on their body. And so I learned about dermatology in that way. And then I went through medical school, did internal medicine, and then dermatology.
Did you want dermatology once you started going in the medical direction?
I kind of did, but then my dad was really pushing me into it because he said it's good for women.
Yes.
And so, of course, I rebelled against
There's
that.
a story behind that, too. I mean, you've told me many times of your experience of going through medical training as a woman. Dermatology today is at least 50% women. Right. And I think medicine as a whole is pretty much close to 50-50, would you say?
Yeah, even probably more women now than men in dermatology, for sure.
Yeah, but back then in our training, there was definitely a harder track being a woman. Right.
It was only 30% women, and the men didn't want us there. All our professors were men, and they thought
Who wouldn't
less
want
of us.
you?
I know, I feel that way too.
You think there's still a lot of those people still left in medicine? I don't see it. I'm not attentive to it. I don't feel that way, and I look down upon it, but I'm not attentive to it.
I'm not attentive to it either because I don't really
You do
care.
what you do.
I just do what I do, and I learned that if you approve of yourself and you follow and stay in your lane and just keep being better, being a physician is lifelong learning. You know this. Yeah. We're always trying to learn and be better. Always a teacher, always a
student.
healer, and always a student.
Yeah.
And that is the joy of what we do. That is what, I love
It's
our
inspiration.
conversations because I've watched you over the years grow. And when you started to really come to terms with how much you love this.
Oh, yeah.
I think part of it in the beginning, I saw you building your career,
Yeah.
and obviously you love it. I mean, that's never in doubt. But we had one conversation that was such a turning point for me where you were just so euphoric over what you were doing
Yeah.
and how you were growing. And I love hearing that because that's the brother and sisterhood
Yeah.
we have in medicine.
Yeah.
So all that other stuff, who cares?
Well, I always say, the true definition of success is when you could get to a point in your career where you could choose things and have fun. Because if you're not having fun, then really what's the point?
Right.
Otherwise, you're just, even if you're successful, you're just adding stress. And again, stress is always going to come with success, but it gives you options. It gives you doors that are open that allow you to choose things that are going to, make your world and the world around you a better place, no matter what you're doing. Let's go a little bit. So, you clearly, you wanted to do something not just to practice medicine, but to inform people and to educate.
Yep.
We live in a world right now of so much content, particularly in the aesthetic, cosmetic surgery realm. Instagram. I mean, 14-year-olds know more about cosmetic options than their mothers do. I had a 14-year-old daughter of a patient who was tagging along today. She knew about thread lifts and M-Sculpt and all these things. The mother was like, what's all this? It's amazing. How do you deal with that as a journalist in terms of re-educating people?
I just do my best.
Yeah.
I tried to get into the different medium as they came up and as I thought they were worthy. So I'm a little bit resistant in the very beginning.
Yeah.
I was on Facebook a little bit later than maybe some people, Instagram a little bit later, but I sort of catch up now. I just started TikTok and learning. And what I've learned is that it is a great way to approach people directly, and each one has their own value and their own specific artistic, creative outputs. And then for the ones that I think are not so well done, like I posted one today of somebody who had like a lobster sunburn, and then I talked about how to manage it.
Right.
So you only combat the stuff you don't like with stuff that you think is honest and clear, and we just keep on trying. So I do all my own social media.
Yeah.
I post and create it all myself. I'm one person. I only have so much time, so I can only do so much.
Yeah.
My radio show helps a lot as well, and then I write. I write for my blog. I write a lot, and I just do my best. But, people who end up trusting things that are wrong, they come around. And I think the first thing I learned in journalism school is that you let people put their own foot in their own mouth.
Yes.
And people ultimately reveal themselves. I don't have to point at anybody.
Yeah.
They'll do it for themselves.
They'll do it for themselves, yeah.
So in the end, if you stay true to who you are and you follow that path, you will persevere,
Yeah.
you will win, and you will come out ahead.
My father always used to say, still says, the best revenge is always to just do well for yourself. Because if you spend time worrying about what other people are doing, if you're critiquing them, I mean, listen, it's our responsibility to check those around us as educators. If there's something bad going on, you have to report it. There are, providers and things out there that are doing things inappropriate, but you can't spend your time scrolling through Instagram being angry at what other people are doing inappropriately. But I think as educators, regardless of how little or how much content we create ourselves, we need to know where our audience is getting information from. I think in the generation above us, our mentors, they were used to being in a situation where patients used to come in and say, okay, doctor, tell me what to do. Whether they have cancer or whether they have wrinkles, tell me what I have. Now they come in with so much preconceived notions. You're watching these do-it-yourself videos where they're coming in there. You have to keep up with this stuff a little bit because people could really get themselves in danger if we don't help them through the process.
I agree, but what's also nice is that it sort of breaks the ice in a way, that people who listen to my radio show or people who follow on social media, those people see who I am, what I do, what my personality is, and then you get that self-selected group who wants what you offer.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like that people who come in see that there's more subtleties and they appreciate that aesthetic. And somebody who wants something else will find that doctor who that's what they post.
Well, that's what we always talk about this because we have slightly different approaches and levels of aggressiveness, and it's that ultimately you attract patients that are going to be like you. There's no best doctor. It's the best doctor for the best patient. Fortunately, there are a lot of different people out there looking for different goals. Certainly, when either one of us see things that are outside of our expertise, we send them other places. We don't perform plastic surgery.
Nope.
And we have to be as honest as possible. And I always try and tell this to my patients, like, listen, this is our first date when I do a consult, okay? All first dates don't work out. I have to get you comfortable with what I think my options are for you. And if we feel like they don't suit your needs, well, then maybe I'm not the best person for you. And I think it's also not to throw people in the deep end so much too, because people are used to with all the information out there. They expect everything thrown at them at once. And most people, like I'm sure most of your new patients like mine, they've been somewhere before. It's very rare we get someone, right, that's a totally newbie.
It is kind of nice, though.
It is nice, right? And then you have, again, I'm sure you have a lot of younger patients, too, that are now entering the game, so to speak, different than when we were starting out, right?
Right. There's a lot of no from me there.
Yeah, exactly. What percentage of your newer patients would you say are under 35? Is it significant?
Yeah, I would say maybe 25 to 30.
Yeah, and I assume there are times where you say no. I mean, I keep asking.
Many times.
I keep getting thread lifts of the brows,
I
cheekbones at 21.
Yeah.
These are things you have to be cautious. And I think as practitioners have been doing this for 20 plus years, you and me, we don't look at a patient just in terms of how we can make them look better today, but think about the consequences for 20 years down the road. What's it going to mean if we blow up their cheeks or their lips?
Absolutely. And why would we want to deprive them of knowing how beautiful they can age? So how beautifully they could age. It is such a pity to change someone's appearance, and a lot of times they don't understand that these products have longer lasting effects than what's on the label, and that when you change the appearance, even if the product goes away over time, you've now changed how they see themselves. And once they start chasing those things and thinking that there's another treatment for this, another treatment for that, they never really appreciate their own beauty. And so I came up with a line of like, don't waste your beauty by not seeing it. And we have to see our beauty before we can enhance it. We want to celebrate it. And in your 20s, you really are kind of at the peak of your beauty. And sometimes people do still need some adjustments.
I think I'm getting better with time, Doris.
You are.
I think I'm getting better with time.
Listen, I told you that when I walked in the room. I was like, you look amazing.
Well, I have a good dermatologist.
Yeah.
Is it you? That's it, exactly. That's a great line. Olivia, we're going to remember that line, okay? My line is, you will spend the rest of your life wishing you looked exactly like you do right now.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, because you want people, listen,
I love that.
We're all insecure in our 20s. We're insecure at any ages, and I can understand what they're going through, and if they see there's things that they could fix.
You're right. 20s are tough that way.
You have to check yourself before you wreck yourself.
I love that. These are good lines.
Yeah, I know, right? The PFRANKMD-isms.
Oh, I have one of my favorites, my best line, which you can use anytime you like, is nothing looks more beautiful in your 50s than sun protection in your 20s.
You are very involved in academia. You travel the world, you lecture. You're very involved in the corporate side as well. You're a trainer for a lot of these companies. You're involved in a lot of the boards where innovations are made. One of our common conversations is potential conflict of interest. I myself work with a lot of the device companies, and I'm always concerned about things that you're selling if you're involved on the corporate side of it, because we do know that the corporate side can be very evil in terms of selling directly to the consumers. Give me a little background about how you feel about the relationship between.
Well, I think that we wouldn't have products if we didn't have companies that made the products.
Yeah.
So I like the idea, and the way I look at it is that if I can be at the ground level of understanding the differences between the products. Now, when I started my practice, there wasn't anything. There was Zyderm and Zyplast. There were like these basic collagens that lasted a few months. Actually, and then we had Cosmoderm and Cosmoplast. There were Erbium and CO2 lasers that were fully ablative. And so our Botox wasn't even FDA approved when I started. So I kind of came in at the ground level of these products coming to market. So I got to participate in some of the FDA trials for the products and go to the meetings where all of the people who were injecting these way before they were even FDA approved were in a room having these conversations. And for me to be part of that conversation, to get to influence how these products come to market, how they're used, how we understand the aging process, and watch it evolve, to me, that gave me an advantage that I was really looking for in terms of education. So I'm an independent physician. I work for nobody but myself, and I answer only to my patients and my conscience. Yeah. And so I get to choose what companies I allow to that I'm interested in working with, and I find that there are partners. Now, I have expressed to many of these companies my disappointment at some of their practices in terms of how they're teaching the products, and so if I don't agree, I won't do it. Yeah. And or I'll teach at our meetings. I don't do live injections either. I think that's a bad thing to do because I don't think it's entirely safe for the patient many times because they're focusing on teaching, not looking at the patient, not concerned about them. So I don't do that. But I do one-on-one with people, and mostly through NYU actually. Yeah. So I think there is a way to walk that line, and to say that corporations are bad makes no sense to me because they make the products that I use every day. Yeah. So I look at them as partners, and partners don't always agree. So when I agree, then I do. When I don't, then I don't. Yeah. But there is a way to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I speak very regularly on my educational resources about really being very attentive. You know, in cosmetic dermatology, it's the only field where people think that they're buying Botox, they are buying Fraxel, they're not buying our skill. It drives me crazy, and I've become quite anti-corporate. And I work with my own companies, particularly the tech companies, but the direct-to-consumer advertising in a way where people are buying a drug rather than a medical service with risks and benefits.
I don't blame the corporations, I blame us.
I know, well, listen, they're attending to stockholders. They have to do what they have to do, but we have to do what we have to do.
Yeah, so I don't. I mean, I practice the way that I want to practice, and the patients who go to places who buy into that commoditization of the product, well, they get what they pay for, and then they find their way to us when they're ready to have results. And I mean, how often do you see things that we have to address and try to redress for them? So I understand why the corporations do it. There's not enough doctors to inject the amount of products they have to sell.
Well, they do it because of money. They do it to the money. They're selling drugs. They're legal drug dealers. I get it, but it's our responsibility to really educate the public against the true commoditization of what you're saying. And again, now with med spas and now business private equity getting into group practice of dermatology, plastic surgeon, we're seeing an overall dilution in the quality of the care in replacement of the commoditization purely for money, which is why I think it's our responsibility, and what I always try and do, and I know you do too, is elevate rather than dilute. And that's what I do with my brand and trying to educate. And it's funny because we always talk about how, like, I don't travel, I don't like go to meetings, I don't like talking, but I like education on a one-on-one with my audience type of thing. I just prefer it in my own arena. But thank God there are physicians like yourself that are really, when we'll talk about this, traveling around the world and stuff. Let's talk briefly about the private equity thing, okay? I assume you regularly speak to so many of our peers because you travel. I assume you're seeing a lot of this where business is trying very much to get into our field.
Yeah, they're in. They're not trying. They're there. They're in. They're everywhere.
Yeah, and there's always a positive. There's a pro and con, right?
I have my practice. I started with one patient who I don't even think paid me. It was like a leftover from my residency, and I've built it to what I have. I do all the injections in my office. So I'm a very mom and pop practice, and I love it. I don't want to take over the world.
That's the fun of it.
Yeah.
If you want to be a conglomerate, don't go into just the practice of medicine. There are other forms of business of medicine. You don't have to do that. But I agree, and you sometimes don't think I agree, but to me, there's nothing more pleasurable than being in a room with a patient, treating them. And I believe that there are ways to scale and give your influence beyond that, but it all comes from that source. It's the patient-to-patient interaction, providing education, providing treatment.
I agree.
Let's talk about your international travel, because you do get to go to a lot of fun places.
Oh my God,
and you get to see how people do things in other places of the world. Do they do cosmetic surgery different in different places of the world?
Not really.
Not really?
No.
Different products?
They have more products.
Yeah.
So there's close to 100 different hyaluronic acid fillers in Europe. And I've traveled everywhere across Asia, Europe, South America, and some of it is for speaking, some of it is going to offices and teaching doctors how to inject. And I learn as much as I teach, plus I get to visit these places. I always add a couple of days to either side of the trip and explore. And it's been such a great ride. You know, I wanted to go into international affairs when I was in college, and I said, well, I really want to get married and have kids. I speak Farsi and French. Wow. And I like languages, and I grew up going to an international school, so I'm used to hearing language, and I'm a first-generation American. So and my dad always took us everywhere, so we loved to travel growing up. I think you did too. You traveled a lot with your parents.
I loved it. I don't like traveling for work that much. That's wrong. I mean, listen, I travel to see patients, but I don't travel to meetings. When I used to do consulting with Estee Lauder, I went to Asia many times. I went to Europe. That was amazing. It was a different stage of my life. It's fun. It is fun.
Right. Well, for me, see, I was a little bit later to start medical school, so I had my children in medical school and right after internship. So when I started to really travel, they were already in high school and then going off to college. And now I'm going to be a grandma. So
unbelievable.
Yeah. So
a
I'm excited about that.
Dermatologist in the making.
That's right. And maybe future daughter-in-law dermatologist too. So
really?
Yeah, my daughter introduced her brother to the girl he's, God willing, going to marry, and so we love her, and she's also going to go into derm.
No need for private equity to buy you out when you have kids. My son, too, he's ready. He's ready for a MD, MBA program. He's super enthusiastic.
Good.
He can do whatever he wants, but oddly, he still wants to be like Dad. So we'll see how that...
They see how much fun we have.
It's true. They see that we like what we do, and I hope he develops the same passions and has the insight to become his own version of a great dermatologist or whatever other doctor.
Love it.
Any favorite places? Any places that you picked up certain tricks that you didn't get anywhere else in the world?
Not really. I'm thinking I was in Taiwan. No, sometimes they do things ahead of what we do in terms of creativity, like they were doing threads before we were, but that sort of gave me a sense of that I don't want to do that necessarily.
And there's some Wild West places, right?
Yes.
I mean, going to Seoul, Korea, it's crazy there. It's like a mall.
It is. Oh my God. South Korea was really interesting. I definitely, and I don't think that they really benefited. When I was walking around in the streets, I saw a lot of really bad skin.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's always good, but I learn from everywhere I go.
There's less legal recourse for a lot of things in different parts of the world also, right? Here in the United States, we take responsibility.
That's a good point. There's things that are injected in especially in Asia, that are not FDA approved here, will never be FDA approved here, and they're ticking time bombs. We see beautiful faces get transformed by granulomas and infections, and it's very, very sad. So it makes me thankful for the FDA process, even though I find it very irritating.
Is there anything available over there right now, device or drug-oriented, that you wish was here? Are we missing out on anything currently?
No.
No, I mean, I think
it's a great question, though.
Right, that is a good question. I just thought of that actually.
It's a really, really good question.
I think because I do a lot of device stuff, I think while they have more options with injectables, we definitely get the first run of devices.
We do, and
there's a lot of copycat stuff there.
Yeah, but I agree, and I think we have too many devices.
Yeah, here.
Yeah, we have.
Do you really?
Yeah, we have too many. We have a lot of Me Too devices, and
That's
we have
it.
devices
Redundancies.
that even when the Pico device came out, right? They come out and they sell it as the be all end all for tattoos or whatever it is that they said it does, and for $200,000 for a laser, which is insane already. And I think
more than that
been
originally.
a little bit disappointing. I don't think the Pico. Not that it's a bad laser, and maybe it's in a better place now, but I'm not usually the first. That's one of the things I think we're different, is that you like to be the first adopter and have the technology right away. I like to let everyone else play with it, make their mistakes.
Yeah.
I'll learn from your mistakes.
Yeah. Well, the way I see it is,
what you find to be good or bad.
I like figuring out. It gets sold to us of what its initial FDA approved intention was. And this is a perfect example, the Pico laser, which is now one of the most used lasers in my practice. I have 2 of them.
But you use it for what you originally bought it for?
I didn't buy it for tattoos. I bought it because I knew it would have other applications in pigment removal. And it is still the #1 adjunct to other lasers when I treat melasma, post-inflammatory pigmentations. I actually hate treating tattoos. I usually convince people to keep it.
Yeah.
But I like being a first adopter of things, and like what you said about being on the board. So if I get in early with using these devices, I get to play around with them and find means for using them. I mean, these are all just tools in a tool chest.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
And I don't golf, but I always say, golfers, they go to their top 3-4 clubs. There could be 20 in the batch. But if you're an expert and you play the game constantly, you need the opportunity every once in a while to pull at that thing. And that's how I look at all my devices. I have my go-tos that every day are running all day long. The Fraxels, the RF microneedling,
right, me too.
Stuff like that. But I have the more esoteric things to do it. And that's why people come to us, because we figure out ways to do things differently than others.
But see, I have one laser. I don't think you have the Fotona laser.
Yes, you love that laser.
I love
We're getting
that
onto
laser.
this conversation.
But the Fotona laser, for me, when I look at the devices I have about 30, a little bit over 30 devices in my office, and I use all of them, but also by using them so constantly, and you might find this with the ones that are your go-to devices, that you learn the nuances of them.
Of course.
The power, how hard you can push it.
Of course.
So I find that, like, if I have a soup pot, I can make pasta in it. I can make all different types of soup. I don't need 5 pots. I make only pasta in one, and only soup in one, and only stews in the other.
Yeah.
So if I can find a pot that's going to be multi-use, that I'm not compromising on outcomes, that I can learn to drive it even better. And you're a driver. You love racing and driving. So you don't want a different car every time, because you got to learn how to press the gas and brakes. So for me, I wait till the devices prove themselves. I season the ones that I have and get so much more out of it that people go, oh, that's not that good a device. But then they look at my results with it and go, how do you get that? And I was like, because I use it all the time and I know how to drive it.
This is where the controversies come out, because I like having multiple vascular lasers, because I don't think one device, everyone says, oh, I'm just going to have a V-beam, or I'm just going to have an XLV. And I always need to have multiple of them, because I find the nuances of combining them together, knowing that this skin type will do better with unfortunately, there's no one laser that does everything.
That's true.
So again,
that's why I have 30 and you have, I don't know, 100?
I don't know. Whatever I have, I don't have enough outlets. That's why I opened up an office downtown. But this is true. Now we're going to get on to the things that we like and we don't like. We've talked about Europe enough.
Yes.
Should we mention the sculpture thing?
We could.
We can
It's a
mention
good
the
one.
sculpture thing. Are we okay over here? So the sculpture story between Dr. Day and I. And again, we like to have controversies every once in a while. She likes to do this. I like to do that. But, I tend to be a little strong in my opinions. And in the use of sculpture many years ago when we used to teach together, I was like, never use sculpture. I don't like it. Granulomas, scar tissue, not collagen building, and it's just too unpredictable and too expensive
And the
for
bet.
patients.
Don't forget the bet.
Yeah. What was the bet? That it would
bet
go
was
off the
in
market?
5 years.
It would go off the market?
And that was 10 years ago.
You know why I didn't go off the market? Because I'm the largest injector of sculpture in the country on the body. I still never use it on the face. I use it on the body, butts, cellulite, all these things. I found a different use for it. But you still inject it in the face.
I do.
You love it.
I do. And also, they just came out with a new indication, so now you don't have to pre-mix it.
Which we've been doing the whole time.
Exactly, because well, you know what, that's the part of the FDA that annoys me, is that when you find a better way to use the product, you still have to go back to the FDA and do all those studies all over again, instead of saying, this is how it was used, and just update the label.
But isn't Botox still a single-use vial?
And maybe
it is.
pays attention.
So it's like,
I know.
it's like these off-label uses.
But now they can teach it on label.
Okay.
Because
So now you can prepare it the same day.
Exactly. You can prepare it the same day. It's an 8 cc plus 1 of Lido dilution for the face. And
that's the dilution you use?
That's what I use. That's what we've all been using. So they went around, they asked all of us.
By the way, when we used to fight about it, it was like 5 and 1.
It was, right. So that's evolved.
Much higher risk. It evolved.
That's true. That's true. Although I spoke with Danny Vlegar, who was the papa of sculpture, really. And so I've been using it more at the way I'm using it now, based on his teachings.
Okay.
So I've, knock on wood, not had an issue with it. I use it a lot for temples. I like it there. I use it for the whole face, but mostly in the temples. And I will say, to this day, my sculpture patients are my happiest patients. It just makes the skin look better. It's not good for every patient, but for patients who need that canvas building where you need to sculpt. I think it's the wrong name. It's not really a sculpting device. It's really
Biostimulatory.
a pen biostimulator.
Yeah, and I
Exactly.
use Radius for the same. I use dilute Radius for it. I get the same. I use it in the exact same pan
Then
facial well.
why do you think that Sculptra is not good then?
Because I find Sculptra to be much more unpredictable. That I've found that patients will
But you
spend their.
haven't used it
I have used it.
in the face?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I thought you said you've never used it in the face.
Oh no. I use it, and there are still a few times. I mean, there are still a few times that a patient insists they want it, and I feel it's indicated, and I will do it. And there are some people that are very
Aren't
few
they
that
so
are not
happy?
Radius responders. Aren't they so happy? I don't know about that.
All your patients are.
I still prefer the Radius, but again, these are different options, and there are people, because you do great at Sculptra, you attract Sculptra patients.
Yep.
I attract people who don't do well with Sculptra.
But also, with Radius, if you hyperdilute it, I don't know if it's as biostimulatory.
You got to find the right
hyperdilute it.
dilution.
Yeah, that's the thing, because there is a dilution at which it's not, whereas with Sculptra, it still is.
Yeah,
So
but it's
more
unpredictable.
reliable
There's
that
some
way.
people, they do 2 vials of Sculptra, they look like a Cabbage Patch. There are other people that do 8 vials of Sculptra, they don't get the
But
response.
that's why you go slow.
I know.
That's why you go slow.
There are a lot of patients who don't want to go slow. They don't want to wait 5 months.
They're not a good Sculptra patient.
Those
But-
are my patients are very
Yes,
demanding.
and mine are slow.
Yeah, my patients want to see differences right away. Anyway, we'll go on to the next subject there. What's been in the media a lot lately is cool sculpting.
Yes.
And as a liposuction surgeon and someone who has cool sculpting, I've always been very anti, and the company that has promoted it over the years, because I've always felt that the risks and benefits were underreported and really were not a service. The commoditization of fat removal was really not a service to patients, and I
agree.
would still to this day, at least a third, if not 50% of my liposuction patients are either failed cool sculpting patients, should have never been sold cool sculpting, had complications, irregularities with cool sculpting, and as much as people were afraid it would remove the need for liposuction, it's made the boom bigger than ever in corrective procedures.
Yep.
How do you feel about these non-invasive fat removal
Well,
techniques?
I did advisory boards and consulting before it was bought.
Yeah.
And so when it was 𝐂𝐡𝐞𝐜, and I told them then that I thought it was barbaric.
You don't do cool sculpting? No.
I never bought it because I knew about this and I had seen it early on, and I also saw the process and thought, I don't want to have this.
Yeah.
I will never do this. So I never bought into it. And PAH was the paradoxical adipocyte hypertrophy was a reason why I didn't get cool
It's when the
sculpting.
fat grows. It happens rarely, but a lot more than 1 in 400,000 that they originally
it's not
reported.
As rare. You could say it doesn't happen rarely. It's uncommon.
It's a
So
single
more than
digit,
rare.
a solid single digit, and I will tell you.
Do we really know that?
What?
Do we really know that?
There are studies that show in the single digits. But the problem is that they're determining as an on-off switch. There's a huge spectrum. And I would tell you, there's not a week that goes by I'm not doing liposuction on someone who had cool sculpting. And when I'm doing the liposuction, I feel the hardness. I feel the tissue. There's something about it. And patients it's like I said, it's on a spectrum. It's not like a lump that sticks out of them, like in some severe cases. But they were just told that they gained weight back, and then they retreated them.
I didn't understand how you have this device that is a rectangular shape. It's going to only treat what's sucked under it. I see step-offs of
I
where
know.
the
Shelving.
fat was. There's no finessing. There's no
And
layering.
this is what
To
drives me
it was
crazy.
such a simple, wrong device, wrong process. They needed to finesse it. They needed to find ways to feather it. They needed to have more reliability. Cryolipolysis, there's another 𝐘𝐨𝐿 device that's out now that uses cold.
Listen.
I just don't think it's the way to go.
This is a
So I don't
way,
do it.
when you have a perfect procedure like tumescent microliposuction,
Yes, I agree.
you have companies that try and get in on the action.
Yep.
There you see these things with Selfina too, with cellulite. They want to.
I didn't do that either.
They want to commoditize plain old subcision.
Right.
With a
I
blade,
agree.
which they've been doing since the 60s.
I saw that device in its earliest model. They came and they showed it, and I did some advisory work. And I said, it's basically, it was a little box, and you go in, and it subsides the bands. And I said, how are they going to make this profitable in any way? And then I see it come to market now. It's this big box. It's in a thing. There's a there's just all these levels to it, and it's so expensive. And I thought, wow, that is impressive.
So this is what bothers me about the big pharma,
I'm
where,
with you on that.
with things like that, with cool sculpting, and the blatant commoditization where they are training non-healthcare providers and selling it like a bag in non-healthcare settings.
Right, but that's not my association.
No, not at all.
But what
it
I'm
just
saying
drives
is
me
that
crazy.
that's so. My point there was that it's not only what they are.
Yeah.
That's one aspect of what they do because they are companies that answer to their shareholders.
Yeah.
Our job as physicians is to redirect them where we can. So that's what they hear from me. I call who I can and I tell them, you're commoditizing. You know what, I go on podium and I speak about these products and my experiences and the data and the science and all that. And I teach and I lecture and I train and I do all that stuff. And yet the cost of the product to me is twice as much as the cost of the same product to a med spa because they buy in bulk and I'm one doctor treating in my office. So
We got to get you new pricing, Doris. I don't agree with that.
But it's what happens to physicians who are working in their practices doing things in an ethical way versus how the products get commoditized. And that's something I was very outspoken about. So in the end, we're independent physicians and we stand up for our colleagues, we stand up for our patients, but the companies are always going to push to where they can make the money and walk that line. They have compliance.
And they will use certain physicians who are happy to take part in that commoditization.
I agree, and I don't do that, but I think I don't cross the line to thinking that they're evil. I think that they're making products that are very useful.
There's no such thing as evil. It's just they're self-motivated. Understandably, I just have to recognize the beast. You got to know. You got to recognize the beast to tame it, and that's really it. And again, try and educate the patients to come for us.
Yes.
For the skill set.
I agree.
That's
what we do.
That being said, tell me. I think sometimes we disagree about other types of fillers. What are you using a lot of these days?
I love the RHA products.
You do?
I really do.
Yeah.
I love the RHA. I also love Restylane Contour.
Yes.
And I like Refine and Define. I still love Restylane. It's the only product I use around the eyes.
I still use a lot of that. I found the Contour doesn't give enough. I don't know. I've gone back to the Define a lot. I've gone back to the Define a lot. It's great. I don't really use Lift. I used a lot of Refine over the years. And I do like the RH products. I don't find them, they don't last very long for me.
You know, RHA for me is great in my slightly older patient who has very bad sun damage, especially in the perioral region.
Yeah.
I find that it lasts so much longer there than anything else in my Refine lasted. So that's my number one go-to for the perioral region.
RH2.
RHA 2 and 3.
2 and 3. These are different. These are another hyaluronic acid fillers that came not too long ago, within a year or so, but have been on the precipice for like 7 years.
I know, it was about time they got it.
It was about time we finally got it.
I'm a little bit disappointed Volbella got FDA approved for under the eyes. I think
oh
we're
my
going to see
God.
a lot of problems from that one.
Oh my God, Vycross Technology, don't get me started. Same
I do
company.
love Voluma though.
Yeah, I blend, we've discussed this. I blend most of my fillers.
I don't blend anything.
I blend most of them with additional anesthesia. I blend them with normal saline.
Except for Radius.
I like to blend my paints, and that's one of the reasons why I don't like RH so much, because it's not easily blendable.
No.
Restylane products, all of them, amazingly so.
But why blend when you have a range of the products?
Why? Because I get better anesthesia, and in my opinion, and I can't tell you this, I get much fewer complications relative to the amount that I inject. I believe changing the viscosity and the rheology of it gives me the same clinical effect without the complications. And it's nerve blocking them. I mix epinephrine in them. I mean, listen, there's no right proven way. It's just something I've gotten used to. Vycross technology, though, under the eyes of any kind, I mean, please. That is just...
I agree. I totally
does
agree.
not belong. Vycross technology like Velour, Volbella, Voluma, they do not belong under the eyes. They retain way too much water. And I like them in the lips because that's where you want water.
I like them in the lips.
And I do not think they should be categorized as reversible fillers. They are not easily reversible fillers. When you have a complication, it is very difficult to get them away.
I agree.
And yeah, I have a problem. I don't use much of the Juvederm products, and when I do, I will blend Voluma, and I will hyper dilute it and use it in various different ways. And I like that.
Juvederm Ultra in the lips,
Yeah.
and Ultra Plus in the lips.
Yeah.
I like Kiss in
Yeah.
the lips.
I don't like Kiss. I find it can get lumpy,
I don't love
bumpy.
Kiss, but I like Kiss.
Yeah. Again,
In the lips.
we are artists here.
Yes.
We all talking about different types of paint here. There, you could take 10 people and have the same injector, inject the same product, and have different reactions.
I totally agree.
You have to get to know, which is why we don't embrace people that jump around.
One other area is needle versus cannula. I use both.
I use both.
Okay. Oh,
Always
good.
both. Oh yeah, always.
Good.
That was never a battle between us. I like
Really?
that. I'm a big cannula fan,
Good.
but I'm not a fan of only using one or the other.
Me neither.
No, not at all. I like that. Look at that. We're actually getting along
my
today.
goodness.
Anything? I mean, I want some secrets from Dr. Day, who's on the international front. I mean, is there anything we got to look forward to?
Yes, I think getting back to life and
Forget about back to life. I'm talking about to make us
I know,
look younger.
I know. Well, I think one of the things I've been feeling lately is that there's a pushback against this overfilled everything.
Yeah.
And now that there's so many products available, we're getting to a point where we're understanding that there are limits to how much should be injected. No, I think in the beginning what happens is Botox gets approved, we learn we can freeze every face.
Too much of a good thing.
Yeah, but then as we have the nuances, so now it's all about finesse, and I think this decade is going to be the roaring 20s in many ways, but when it comes to aesthetics, it's going to be about finesse.
Yeah.
And new devices. I think 𝐂𝐿aCore is
Yeah.
one that I think you have. Do you like
Yeah,
it?
we're getting it. There's been some supply chain issues there, but 𝐂𝐿aCore is a new category of skin tightening technology called fractional microcoring, where you're removing little columns of skin rather than snipping it away when you're pulling. And we are very excited about it. I do believe it's going to have a couple of years of evolution before we really find out what's good about it. But like you sitting at the meetings with new drugs, I am really very much looking forward to figuring out how we're going to best utilize that device, because it is a new category, and I think it's going to be very useful. I think we're going to learn a lot from it. I think I agree with you. I've always been about combinations, not too much of a. There's never one thing too much of a good thing, which is why I like threads, which is why I like heat-based device, all therapies, things like that. Art of microneedling. These are all things that when you combine, you get an overall great result.
Absolutely. We're not aging in one dimension. Yeah. You have to address all the different
Exactly.
dimensions.
Not aging in one dimension, Dr. Day. I like
Boom.
that. And also, a lot of these places, these commoditized health med spas, they really only do one or two things. Right? They're not investing in technology. They're doing a cookie cutter, and they're making it very difficult. So,
and also, when you go back, you're not always seeing the same person.
Yeah.
And when our patients come, they see us,
Yeah.
and we have a vision. So you may have, dressed to the nines,
Yeah.
but if you're wearing Gucci, Fendi, Prada,
Yeah.
they don't all go together.
Yeah.
So even if they're good, they don't match each
That's
other.
right.
And
I wear them
silly.
all at the same time. That's
But
just
you
me.
can get away with it. The rest of us, not so much.
I think we have to continue to educate and tread lightly with the younger generation doing more and more and more. I think we have to take advantage of all the options out there, helping people filter, right? Because you said there's a lot of redundancies. I mean, I have 4 different microneedling devices, not because I need them, but because I am involved with the companies.
Yeah.
There are times where I'll use one over the other, but there's a lot of redundancy.
Yep.
I like figuring out which one's going to work best for me.
I do the same thing. I do a lot with devices, but I'm much more choosy because they take up so much space.
Oh, yeah.
So I can't have all the devices. So there's a lot where if I feel like they're already redundant and they can't make the pitch really well of what they think their device is good for, or if I feel like they're just trying to get to market too fast, I won't do anything.
Yeah, I agree.
But there are interesting. There are companies that in the past I wasn't a fan of that I think have turned themselves around, and now I'm happy to speak with them.
Yeah.
And
that's how I feel about 𝐂𝐿aCOR.
Yeah, well, you know what? The fact that we can evolve and grow, and that is actually one of your strengths, is that there are things where you will come around and you will say something different another time, and you're not fixed to one thing. And
I don't know if my wife will agree with that statement.
I'm sure she would.
Oh, all right. She knows my wife very well. So speaking of that, I want to know now. I know everything about Dr. Darcy. I know her dogs, I know her kids, I know her wonderful husband. But, this is the Pro Aging podcast. So I want you to give the audience a little bit, as a successful professional mother, educator, journalist. It's a lot of things. So how do you keep it together? What are the core things you go to? Do you meditate? Do you walk with your dog every morning?
I do
the secret?
A lot of walking,
Yeah.
and I find that it's just all life.
Yeah.
It's one is that trauma I told you from the beginning, is that for me, I know that every day is a gift, and I'm so grateful to get to do what I do. And I think that active gratitude of being aware of the blessings that I have and knowing that I owe to return that and try to make the world a better place any way I can, that actually gives me a lot of joy. And then the rest is I love my travels. I just pick
I was going to say your travels. I think that's like what I always saw. That's like the core to like your everything. You know what I mean?
It is. And now my husband, we pick what we go to together, and some things I go to alone. And now I'm going to start taking grandbaby with me when it's big enough.
Unbelievable. You have the little Gucci the little carrier thing.
Whatever it is.
When's this baby coming, by the way?
April 21, and she's doing so well.
That soon?
Well, it feels like soon to us. To her, not quite.
What
that
flavor
soon.
are we getting?
We don't know.
Oh,
you want to be surprised.
You're going old school.
Yeah, but it's all of that, putting it together. And if you have like a 10-course meal, you're full after like the third course. But then the next one comes, you're like, that looks really good. And then you just have a bite of that. So for me, it's like this massive, delicious meal. And just breathing exercises. I'm studying a lot of longevity. My dad was really into it. And his line was, he wanted to die young at an old age. And that's kind of what I'm aiming for. And that's what pro-aging is, right?
It's true.
To die young at an old age.
Having vitality. What's the point?
And we're coming around to understanding how to do that.
Yeah.
So I work with my patients too. I always tell them, I don't want you to just look better, I want you to be better.
Yeah.
And we look at supplements, we look at lifestyle things.
Yeah.
And so by actively practicing that, I don't meditate. I don't think you may meditate for real because you've studied
But
it.
you could be meditative. You don't have to meditate to be meditative.
That's what I am, meditative. And when I walk, I don't listen to music. I just let my mind go.
You could be
and
doing
I come
dishes.
up with some of my best ideas.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's giving your head time to wander. It's like I always say, when you're a kid on the school bus and you put your head up against the wall and you just kind of like, you fall asleep or you lose sight with things. I yearn for that time, that almost boredom, where that's when the fun stuff comes into your head. And if you don't give yourself that opportunity, you'll never get those times. Then you're just chasing things.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
And then writing is good for me too, and reading.
Yeah. That's
There's
true.
more time in a day
Writing is
than-
good. Diana, my wife, she journals a lot.
Good.
And I've tried to find time to do that. That's a good thing to add to the thing. Just writing down your thoughts, right?
Or even talking into something with your thoughts. But when people say, when I want to find time, it's because you don't really want to do it.
Right. It's true. Well, listen, if you don't have time for something, what you're really saying is you're not prioritizing it.
Exactly.
And that's it. And you don't have time for everything in the world, and it's okay not to prioritize everything. Although I do speak to myself in the shower, from what I'm told.
I speak to myself in the street. One day I was walking to Bellevue, and I was like, had so much on my mind, and I just said something out loud, and this schizophrenic homeless guy walking past me said, "Good morning, Noisy," and I was like, "Oh, damn."
Really? All right. Well, Dr. Day, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for
I want you to look into that camera. I want to tell everybody how they can find out more about you, your radio show, your website, your practice. Go to it.
Well, it's very simple. I'm at Dr. Doris Day on all my social media, on Instagram, Facebook, my website, TikTok, LinkedIn, Dr. Doris Day on all of it.
Yeah, and by the way, it's a whole nother podcast about the name Doris Day.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about that another time. I love you. Mwah. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
And I will see you on your radio show next.
Yes.
Okay. See you later, everybody. Episode 6, Season 2. Another good one. We will see you next time.